The morning of my divorce hearing, my husband walked into the courtroom wearing a confident grin, as if the verdict had already gone his way. As he passed me, he leaned in and quietly said, "You're walking out of here with nothing." His girlfriend didn't even try to be discreet. She laughed loudly and said, "She doesn't deserve a penny." I never answered them. I didn't even make eye contact. Instead, I calmly handed my attorney a sealed envelope and quietly told him, "Give this to the judge when the time is right." A few minutes later, the judge opened it. He read the first page, then the second. His expression changed instantly. He looked up, glanced across the courtroom, and spoke 4 words that changed everything. "Well, this changes things. My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 38 years old, and those were the final words my husband spoke to me before our divorce hearing officially began. You're walking away with nothing." He said it with complete confidence, convinced he had already won. 5 years earlier, those words would have shattered me. That morning, they barely affected me. Because I already knew something he didn't. But to understand why, we have to go back 15 years. Ethan and I met when we were both 23. He had endless ambition, but almost no money. I had a reliable accounting job, a small apartment, and enough hope to believe we could build a future together. His dream was to launch a software company. Almost everyone told him it was too risky. I never did. I believed in him from the very beginning. 2 years later, we got married and made a simple promise to each other. I would provide financial stability, while he focused on building the business. When the company finally succeeded, we'd enjoy the rewards together. At least, that was the plan. The first few years tested us in every possible way. There were months when the business barely made enough to survive. More than once, Ethan came home ready to give up. We would sit together at our tiny kitchen table, and I'd pour him another cup of coffee while reminding him why he had started this journey. "We'll get through this," I'd always tell him. And somehow, we did. I worked overtime almost every week. My income paid the mortgage, bought the groceries, covered the utility bills, kept our health insurance active, and even helped fund the company's software development whenever investors backed away. I postponed graduate school, because we couldn't afford both my education and his dream. I drove the same aging car for years. Vacations became something we kept promising ourselves for someday. Every sacrifice felt worthwhile, because I truly believed we were building our future together. Whenever Ethan thanked me, he'd smile and say, "One day, all of this will belong to both of us." I believed him every single time. Then everything changed. During the company's 7th year, one of Ethan's software products unexpectedly exploded in popularity. Within less than 2 years, his business had expanded into 3 different states. Suddenly, there were magazine interviews, industry awards, conference invitations, and media attention everywhere he went. People wanted to know the story behind Ethan Carter. At first, I couldn't have been happier. Watching someone you love achieve a lifelong dream is an incredible feeling. But success slowly transformed him. He stopped asking how my day had gone. Our conversations over dinner became long speeches about investors, profits, and expansion plans. He hired assistants to manage his business life, yet somehow expected me to continue managing everything at home. One evening, I mentioned that I wanted to finally return to graduate school. Without even lifting his eyes from his phone, he asked, "Why?" The question stunned me. "What do you mean, why?" "I've always wanted to finish my degree." He simply shrugged. "It doesn't seem necessary anymore." That one sentence stayed with me. Bit by bit, the partnership we had spent years building disappeared. Business trips became more frequent. Late-night meetings became the norm. Weekend plans were cancelled over and over again. Every time I questioned the changes, I heard the same response. You're overthinking. You worry too much. It's only work. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. Until one evening, while organizing paperwork for our finances. As an accountant, reviewing financial records had always been second nature to me. That's why something immediately felt wrong. While organizing our paperwork, I discovered hotel reservations that didn't match a single business conference on Ethan's schedule. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I stayed quiet and started paying closer attention. The more I watched, the harder it became to ignore what was happening. He stepped outside whenever certain phone calls came in. Text messages disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived. Devices we'd always shared openly were suddenly locked behind new passwords. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I overheard a conversation Ethan never intended for me to hear. "I'll take care of the divorce soon," he said casually. "I just need to get everything in place first." For a moment, it felt like the entire world had gone silent. It wasn't the word divorce that shocked me. It was realizing he'd already been planning it behind my back, without saying a single word to me. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat alone in our living room until the sun came up. By morning, I'd made my decision. If our marriage was already over in his mind, I wasn't going to waste my energy begging him to stay. Instead, I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Linda Morales. After carefully reviewing the documents I'd brought, she leaned back in her chair with a surprised expression. "Rachel," she asked, "exactly how much documentation have you kept?" Without saying a word, I placed a folder nearly 3 inches thick on her desk. Inside were bank statements, tax returns, emails, loan agreements, receipts, and financial records spanning well over a decade. She looked genuinely impressed. "You saved all of this?" I nodded. I've always believed paperwork tells the truth. Over the following weeks, Ethan assembled one of the most expensive legal teams in the city. Meanwhile, mutual friends kept calling me. Apparently, he wasn't shy about predicting the outcome. "He says you'll never get a single share of the company," one friend told me. "He keeps telling everyone he built everything by himself." I never argued. I never tried to defend myself. The truth doesn't become stronger because you say it louder. Finally, the morning of the hearing arrived. Linda straightened the stack of files in front of us before looking over. "Are you ready?" I glanced toward the courtroom doors and took a slow breath. "I'm finished fighting," I said quietly. Then I smiled. "I'm ready for the truth." A moment later, Ethan walked inside wearing a perfectly tailored designer suit. His attorney followed close behind. Not far behind them was the same woman whose name I'd connected to those hotel reservations. She noticed me watching and smiled. Ethan stepped closer. "You should have accepted my settlement offer," he whispered confidently. I didn't respond. Seconds later, the courtroom doors opened. Everyone rose to their feet as the judge entered and took his seat. While the courtroom settled into silence, I reached into my briefcase and carefully removed a sealed envelope. I handed it to Linda. "Please," I whispered. "Give this to the judge when the time is right." The courtroom fell completely silent as the judge took his seat. Beside me, Linda neatly arranged our files. Across the room, Ethan leaned back comfortably, looking like a man who believed victory was already guaranteed. He wasn't nervous. Not even a little. Why would he be? In his mind, the company, the investments, and every success they'd achieved belonged to him alone. His attorney rose first. Your Honor, he began, Mr. Carter built this company through his own talent, determination, and leadership. While Mrs. Carter was his wife, she played no significant role in creating or expanding the business. We respectfully ask the court to recognize the company as Mr. Carter's independent achievement. Ethan gave a small, satisfied nod. Then he looked at me. A quiet smile appeared on his face. It was the same smile he'd worn years earlier when he promised we'd build our future together. Only this time, there was no kindness behind it. The judge shifted his attention toward Linda. Mrs. Carter's response. Linda stood without hesitation. We'll address those claims, Your Honor. She didn't argue. She didn't interrupt opposing counsel. Instead, she calmly approached the clerk's desk and handed over the sealed envelope I'd given her earlier. This was prepared by my client. The judge adjusted his glasses. And what exactly am I looking at? A chronological summary of documented financial contributions, supported by records already entered into discovery. The judge nodded. I'll take a look. Carefully, he opened the envelope. The entire courtroom watched without making a sound. Ethan folded his arms with complete confidence. His girlfriend glanced at me with a faint smile, clearly expecting nothing surprising. Neither of them looked concerned. The judge began reading. His eyes moved slowly across the first page. Then the second. Suddenly, he paused. He returned to an earlier paragraph and read it again before continuing. A few seconds later, he looked up. Mrs. Carter. Yes, Your Honor. You organized these records yourself. I did. He gave an approving nod. I appreciate a well-prepared timeline. Then he returned to the documents. There were no emotional speeches. No personal attacks. No dramatic accusations. Only facts. Only dates. March 2011. Rachel Carter withdrew $28,000 from her personal savings after investor funding was delayed, allowing company payroll to be met. Supporting financial records attached. September 2012. Rachel refinanced her vehicle to lower monthly expenses, freeing additional household income to keep business operations running. Supporting bank statements attached. February 2013. Rachel postponed graduate school indefinitely, so she could continue working full-time, while Ethan focused exclusively on growing the company. Supporting employment records attached. Then came the emails. One of them immediately caught the judge's attention. It was written by Ethan. I couldn't have kept this company alive without you. One day, everything we build will belong to both of us. The courtroom remained perfectly still. The judge continued reading. Another email. Thank you for paying the mortgage again. I promise I'll never forget this sacrifice. Then another. Every investor meeting is possible, because you're holding everything together at home. I never looked at Ethan. I didn't have to. The silence coming from his side of the courtroom was already telling the story. The confidence he'd carried inside was fading. The judge reached for the financial exhibits already submitted by both legal teams. One by one, he compared the dates. Bank statements. Loan agreements. Corporate filings. Transfer records. Every few moments, he paused to write another note in the margin. Finally, he looked directly at Ethan. Mr. Carter. Ethan straightened in his chair. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Carter, the judge said, looking up from the file. Yes, Your Honor. You testified that after the company's first year, it became entirely self-funded. That's correct. The judge lifted a document from the stack. Then perhaps you can explain this transaction. For the first time that morning, Ethan's expression changed. His attorney immediately leaned forward. What transaction? The $28,000 deposit made into the company's operating account. His attorney quickly flipped through the exhibit. It appears to be. His sentence trailed off. The judge continued in the same calm tone. The amount matches a withdrawal from Mrs. Carter's personal savings account made on the very same day. Silence filled the courtroom. The judge turned another page. You also testified that your household expenses were handled independently. He held up another financial record. Yet these documents show Mrs. Carter paid the mortgage, utilities, insurance premiums, and healthcare expenses for nearly 4 consecutive years while the company was operating at a loss. Ethan shifted uneasily in his chair. His attorney leaned over and whispered something. For the first time since the hearing began, neither of them looked certain. The judge continued. There is also written correspondence acknowledging Mrs. Carter's financial support. He raised another printed email. In this message, you specifically thank her for keeping the company alive. The room became so quiet that every page turning echoed through the courtroom. Looking over the top of his glasses, the judge asked, Mr. Carter, were these statements true when you wrote them? Ethan opened his mouth. Before he could continue, his attorney stood. Your Honor, we respectfully request a short recess. The judge raised a hand. In a moment. He returned to the timeline one final time, before carefully setting it on the bench. Then he looked toward me. Mrs. Carter. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. The courtroom remained completely silent. He tapped the organized timeline lightly with his pen. This is not an emotional argument. It's a factual one. Then he addressed both legal teams. Based on today's testimony and the supporting documentation before the court, I am ordering an additional review of the financial disclosures before making any final determination regarding the division of assets. Ethan's confident smile had completely disappeared. Behind him, his girlfriend quietly lowered her eyes. The judge gathered the remaining paperwork and added one final observation. When the facts are presented this clearly, they deserve to be examined just as carefully. 3 weeks later, everyone returned to the courtroom. During that time, the court-appointed financial experts reviewed everything. Bank records, tax filings, corporate documents, loan agreements, email archives. Nothing was overlooked. I didn't spend those weeks celebrating. There was nothing to celebrate. A marriage had ended. No amount of documentation could erase that reality. When I entered the courtroom again, Ethan looked like a different man. His expensive suit was still perfectly pressed. But the certainty he'd worn before was gone. The judge reviewed the final report before speaking. The financial review confirms that Mrs. Carter made substantial, well-documented financial contributions during the company's formative years. He turned another page. It also confirms that several previous statements regarding the company's funding and household financial responsibilities were incomplete. No one interrupted. No one objected. The judge continued. Accordingly, the marital estate will be divided in accordance with the verified financial record and the applicable law. That was all. No dramatic speeches. No raised voices. No celebration. Only the truth. After months of uncertainty, the evidence spoke for itself. The hearing concluded less than 30 minutes later. As everyone began leaving the courtroom, Ethan remained seated. His attorney quietly packed his briefcase and stepped outside. Even the woman who had smiled so confidently during the first hearing slipped away without saying a word. For the first time in years, It was just the two of us. Rachel. I stopped. I was wrong. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I convinced myself that once the company became successful, everything that happened before didn't matter anymore. He looked down at his hands. But it did. I stayed silent. After a moment, he continued. I kept telling myself I'd built everything alone, because it was easier than admitting how much I depended on you. When he finally looked up, his eyes met mine. I'm sorry. There wasn't any anger left inside me. Only peace. I didn't spend 15 years helping you because I wanted recognition. He nodded slowly. I know. I helped because I loved you. Another quiet moment passed between us. I never wanted this to become a fight. Neither did I, he admitted. I only wanted the truth. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. You deserved that. I wished him well. Not because that single apology erased the past, but because carrying bitterness would have kept me connected to a chapter that had already ended. A month later, the settlement became final. The outcome wasn't extravagant. It wasn't symbolic. It was simply fair. For the first time in years, I wasn't investing my energy into someone else's future. I was finally building my own. Instead of purchasing a larger home, or taking an expensive vacation, I invested in the dream I'd postponed for nearly 15 years. I opened my own consulting firm. Its mission was simple. Helping small family-owned businesses organize their finances and grow on solid foundations. Ironically, the dream I'd delayed while helping Ethan build his company became the beginning of my own next chapter. The very first client, who walked through my office doors, reminded me of who we had once been. Young. Hopeful. Determined to build something meaningful. The difference was, this time, I wasn't standing behind someone else's dream. I was standing inside my own. People sometimes ask if I felt victorious after the divorce. My answer usually surprises them. I never wanted revenge. Revenge would have kept my eyes fixed on the past. What I wanted was something much simpler. Acknowledgement. Not applause. Not sympathy. Just the recognition that quiet sacrifices matter, even when no one notices them in the moment. The courtroom eventually gave me that recognition. But something even more important happened long before the judge ever opened my letter. I stopped measuring my worth by someone else's appreciation. For years, I believed my value depended on whether another person recognized everything I'd done. I was wrong. My value had always existed. The judge didn't create it. The financial records didn't create it. The settlement didn't create it. They simply revealed what had been true all along. On the evening I locked the door to my new office after my very first day in business, I paused for a moment and smiled. Because the greatest thing I walked away with wasn't money. It wasn't property. It wasn't even the settlement itself. It was the confidence to know that the strongest foundation I would ever build was the one beneath my own life.